The world ended not with a bang, but with the rising of the ash wall. It was a monolithic barrier of pressurized volcanic stone and forgotten alloy, stretching so high into the gray atmosphere that the children of Sector 4 believed it held up the sky. For 3 generations, the remnants of humanity lived in its shadow, crammed into tiered, metallic districts. They were safe from the outside, or so the Ministry of Order claimed. Leo stood on the rusted scaffolding of the outer defense rim, his fingers gripping the cold iron railing. At 17, he was a junior scout, trained to monitor the automated seismic sensors buried deep within the wall's foundation. The wind-up here tasted of sulfur and dead static. Below him, the sprawling slums of the lower district hummed with the desperate energy of millions trying to survive on synthetic rations and recycled water. "Don't look too hard into the fog, Leo," muttered Captain Vance, his mentor, adjusting a heavy brass-plated telescope. "The abyss has a way of looking back." Leo didn't answer. He was staring at the telemetry tablet strapped to his forearm. For the past 3 weeks, the Deep Earth sensors hadn't just been recording random shifts. They were recording a rhythm. A heavy, rhythmic thumping that pulsed exactly every 12 seconds. It wasn't the shifting of tectonic plates. It was a footstep. Suddenly, the metal grating beneath their feet shuddered. A low, sub-audible groan echoed through the core of the ash wall, vibrating so violently that the rivets in the scaffolding began to pop, whistling through the air like bullets. The sky didn't fall, but the wall began to bleed black dust. The alarm sirens didn't wail. They shrieked, a piercing, 2-tone frequency that signaled a Tier 1 structural compromise. It was a sound no living person in Sector 4 had ever heard outside of drills. "Get to the ziplines," Vance roared, his voice nearly drowned out by the grinding of stone. But Leo was paralyzed. Through the viewing slit of the defense rim, the perpetual fog of the dead zone was parting. A shape was forming in the haze, colossal and impossible. It stood taller than the lower tiers of the city, its silhouette jagged and asymmetrical. It didn't have flesh, nor was it entirely mechanical. It looked like a walking mountain of fused obsidian and glowing, molten veins, shifting and reforming with every step. The entity struck the ash wall with a sound that shattered every glass window within 3 miles. The reinforced stone, engineered to withstand centuries of pressure, collapsed inward like dry chalk. A shockwave of pulverized rock and heat blasted through the breach, throwing Leo backward into the steel scaffolding. His vision blurred, a high-pitched ringing filling his ears as the world tilted sideways. Through the dust cloud, he saw the breach. A jagged V-shaped gap now opened to the forbidden outside world. And crawling through that gap, dragging its massive, molten-core torso over the debris, was the creature. It didn't look at the fleeing citizens below. It simply breathed, exhaling a cloud of suffocating ash that instantly turned the vibrant, crowded market square into a silent graveyard of gray statues. Humanity's cage had cracked, and the predators were coming inside. "Move, kid, if you want to keep breathing." A rough hand yanked Leo to his feet. It was Vance, his face streaked with black soot and blood. The sky was now raining embers, lighting the smoggy afternoon into a hellish twilight. Around them, the standard infantry was in a state of total collapse, their projectile rifles doing nothing but chipping harmless sparks off the creature's obsidian hide. "The rifles are useless," Leo shouted over the din of explosions. "We need the riggers." As if on cue, a series of sharp, pneumatic hisses echoed from the upper barracks. Shadows launched themselves from the higher catenary lines, the Iron Vanguard. These were elite soldiers equipped with experimental grapple thrust units, heavy harnesses powered by compressed steam that allowed them to launch across the vertical cityscape like mechanical spiders. Leo watched in breathless awe as 3 riggers swung through the smoke, their dual-pronged grappling hooks anchoring deep into the buildings surrounding the breach. They carried thermite lances, massive blades tipped with volatile chemical cells designed to slice through heavy armor. The lead rigger vaulted off a rooftop, using his momentum to swing directly behind the creature's neck. With a deafening roar of the thrusters, he drove the lance into a glowing, molten seam between the beast's shoulder blades. A blinding flash of white-hot chemical fire erupted. The creature shrieked, a sound like grinding metal plates, and thrashing its massive arm, it swatted the air. The rigger's line snapped, and he was thrown into the stone facade of a building, vanishing in a shower of brick. The beast wasn't stopping. The thermite lance had caused a massive, smoking crater in its neck, revealing a glowing core of pure, swirling energy. But the obsidian stone was already regenerating, creeping forward like cooling lava to seal the wound. "It mends itself," Leo whispered, horror sinking into his chest. "We can't kill it from the outside." Vance grabbed a spare grapple thrust harness from a fallen soldier and forced it onto Leo's shoulders, buckling the heavy leather straps across his chest. "Take the secondary lift to the inner sanctum, Leo. Tell the ministry the wall has fallen. Give them the sensor data. They need to know the frequency." "What about you?" Leo asked, his hands trembling as he gripped the control handles of the unfamiliar rig. "I'm going to buy you 5 minutes," Vance said, his expression grimly calm. He primed his own thermite blades and leapt into the abyss, his grappling lines reeling out with a mechanical scream. Leo didn't run to the lift. He couldn't. He watched Vance maneuver with veteran precision, looping around the monster's legs to bind its movement. But the creature didn't just use brute force. The molten veins across its chest flared brighter, and a wave of intense, localized heat radiated outward, melting Vance's steel cables instantly. Vance fell through the smoke, lost to the chaos below. Left alone on the crumbling platform, something snapped inside Leo. The fear evaporated, replaced by a cold, burning hollow. He gripped the rig handles, aimed at the highest remaining crane above the breach, and fired the hooks. The wind whipped against Leo's face as the steam thrusters propelled him into the sky. He had never flown a live rig before, only simulators, but instinct and adrenaline took over. He swung in a wide arc, dodging a massive fist of fused rock that pulverized the very platform he had stood on a moment prior. He unlatched his primary line, free falling through the blinding smoke toward the monster's back. He could feel the blistering heat radiating off the creature's skin, stinging his eyebrows and blistering his hands. He aimed his secondary hooks directly into the open, smoking crater where Vance's team had cracked the armor. The hooks bit deep into the semi-molten flesh stone. Leo reeled himself in violently, landing hard against the creature's back. The surface was unstable, shifting like an earthquake under his boots. Right beneath the cracked outer shell, buried inside the glowing energy matrix of the monster, Leo didn't see gears or organs. He saw a shape. It was encapsulated in a crystalline cocoon of hardened ash, wired into the monster's neural pathways by pulsing, glowing tendrils. It was a human body. Through the translucent crystal, Leo could make out the sharp features of a young woman, her eyes closed, her chest rising and falling in perfect synchronization with the 12-second pulse of the monster's footsteps. This wasn't an invading force from a wasteland of monsters. The weapon was human. The monsters were them. As if sensing his presence, the girl's eyes snapped open inside the crystal, glaring with a terrifying, luminous gold color. The realization paralyzed Leo. The creature's movements slowed, its giant head turning around with agonizing deliberation to look directly at its own back, directly at him. The gold eyes of the girl in the cocoon reflected in the giant, crystalline visor of the monster's face. She wasn't attacking anymore. She was staring at his uniform, specifically at the crest of Sector 4 pinned to his leather jacket, a crest featuring a broken chain. A voice echoed inside Leo's mind, sharp and resonant, skipping his ears entirely. "The wall is not a shield," the voice whispered, heavy with a profound, historical sorrow. "It is a quarantine." Before Leo could process the words, a massive explosion rocked the lower district. The Ministry of Order had finally deployed their heavy artillery from the inner sanctum, firing massive, solid iron shells directly at the breach. One of the shells struck the monster's shoulder, throwing Leo off his feet and severing his anchor lines. He fell backward into the open air, the ground rushing up to meet him. As he deployed his emergency parachute, he watched the giant beast turn away from the city. It didn't push further into the tiers. Instead, it retreated through the smoke, carrying the mysterious pilot back into the vast, uncharted fog of the outside world. Leo landed hard on a pile of debris, bruised but alive. Around him, the city was in ruins, but the immediate danger had passed. He looked up at the broken ash wall. The mystery of what lay beyond was no longer a distant dream, it was a terrifying reality that the Ministry had been hiding all along. And the war for survival had just begun.